There's been a public hearing in order for the board to hear the concerns of Lane County citizens regarding the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act as codified in 10 U.S.C. 801. The section of the federal code clearly is interpreted by some to allow for the indefinite detention without trial of United States citizens in certain cases. With that, we conclude the public testimony, and at this point I will open the floor to discussion by the Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Sorensen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, assembled citizens, for coming in and testifying this evening. I'm really glad that as a result of the letter I had originally written on this topic, that we moved to a discussion of this, and that led to this public hearing and the presentation you heard this evening. So first and foremost, I want to thank the board for continuing to move this along and give an opportunity for the public to testify. I'm not going to reiterate all the things that were said tonight, but I would like to make a couple of quick comments. The first is the camps that were set up during World War II that the last speaker spoke about. Those camps were of course, mostly in the West, but some of those camps were as far east as Arkansas. And you had the awkward situation where Americans of Japanese descent would be taken from only the Pacific Coast states, Oregon, Washington, California at the time, and they would be transferred inland. So that might be Tule Lake, California, it might be in Idaho, but ironically, Americans of Japanese descent in inner mountain communities were not sent to camps. So some of those folks had their farms taken away from them in Sandy, Oregon, and shipped all the way to Arkansas. And as incredible as this sounds, this took place, in the lifetimes of people in this room. And if you want to see a current example of some way to remember this intrusion on the rights of Americans, you can go over here to 6th and Willamette. Now we're at 8th and Oak, so that's about 2-3 blocks away. And there's a place where you can actually read the names of the camps. You can see the names of the people from Oregon that were taken to these camps. So it's a good reminder that this has happened in the lifetimes of people right here. Secondly, I want to thank whoever brought up the Charter Review Commission, because Lane County does have, and the voters of Lane County have put in their charter, a review of Lane County's charter, the basic laws that we go under. And this issue of an unconstitutional federal law and how does the local government respond to that is an important area that ought to be studied by this Charter Review Commission. I think that the testimony tonight is that we should move ahead with a resolution, writing up a resolution that we do oppose these sections of the National Defense Authorization Act that really have nothing to do with the defense of our nation. And I think we ought to make it clear, not only to Congress, that we oppose that, but also, and want it repealed, but also to the Oregon legislature, because they, like all of the other legislatures, also can comment on federal legislation. And for the more difficult part, and that is the ordinance idea, that this board and the people of Lane County can enact ordinances for the operation of our government and Lane County's government, and that ordinances apply to the people in Lane County, but also to the government of Lane County. And this raises a really interesting problem, and one that I think we should pursue with our ordinance, and that is, well, you got this federal law, and there's a lot of cooperation between the federal government and local law enforcement and local prosecutors and federal prosecutors. There's a lot of cooperation, generally that's a good thing. But what if one branch of government, one type of government, is trying to enforce its laws when those laws are unconstitutional, and when the people in Lane County, through their elected government or through initiative, have passed their own law? And I think that you saw this in the case of the city of Portland. They weren't taking some of the policies of the federal government for detaining certain people, and they actually passed policies, I don't know about ordinances, but policies that said the police are not going to participate and they're not going to cooperate when involved with this illegal power that the federal government's trying to assert over us. So I do think we should move forward on the ordinance. I'll also say in conclusion that, we started here, say 11 hours ago roughly. So you're talking to some tired people up here, and I've heard a lot on this. I really want to thank everybody for coming, testifying, and I'll be happy to keep working on this. And we really need to remember that, partisan politics is part of our system, nonpartisan politics is part of our system, and defense of our Constitution is something that virtually all Americans agree in, and I'm glad we're all here tonight.
Commissioner Bozovic.
Thank you. I'm glad that Pete wrote that letter after I'd introduced him to Shane. But I'm really happy to have everybody here and testify tonight. It shows that there is a will of the people from all spectrums. We've heard from college Republicans to the Democrat Party of Lane County, from 9/12 groups to Occupy folks. It's really great to see such a diverse group of our citizens speak out in favor of our constitutional rights. And I think that is a really great thing. There are a couple quotes that came to my mind as I'm listening to all this that weren't used tonight. I'm surprised. Probably the first one that comes to my mind is Benjamin Franklin. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. The other one's Edmund Burke. All that is required for evil to flourish in the world is for good men to do nothing. Under our home rule charter, we are the good men that can either do something or do nothing. And I really think it's important that Lane County take a very affirmative stance against the possible unconstitutional interpretations of Section 1021 and 1022 of the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act. And I think we need to have maybe some legal counsel on our ability to even go as far as nullification language and how effective that is or not. But I do think, at the very least, we need to have a strong resolution against the act and requesting amendment of it. In addition, I think we should ask that county resources not be utilized for the carrying out of any use of this act in unconstitutional matters. And I would even go as far as looking to have provisions in that ordinance that would hold people accountable and prosecute them for assisting in the enforcement of this act. We've heard lots of testimony, everything from how you define belligerent. Is it standing on a corner with a three-corner hat on? Yeah. Guilty. Or is it setting up a tent in a public plaza? I mean, it's pretty easy to be labeled by your government as belligerent, and then to be lumped in and put in a place that you shouldn't be put under this act. When are the end of hostilities? We've gotten to this place where we don't declare war on another nation anymore. we declare war on a concept. How long is the war on poverty going on? How about the war on drugs? Now it's the war on terror. When will that ever end? You can't declare an end to a war on a concept. So it's basically, we can decide that you're belligerent, and we can decide then to hold you indefinitely till the end of whenever this concept goes away, which concepts never do. So to me, this is really very bad law, and I think it is up to us as sovereign citizens to decide to not help in the enforcement of this law, to not aid in the implementation of this law, and possibly go as far as nullification, depending on whether, our ability to do that as a commission. So I would urge the rest of the commission to support having staff come back with some of those options and language for ordinances that we could pass. At the very least, we need to pass a very strong resolution urging amendment or repeal of these sections, and it should go as far as looking at non-compliance, non-assistance, non-use of county resources, and actually holding people, and including our own staff, responsible for not assisting in the implementation of this act, and possibly having penalties for assisting in that act and helping with this act. And that's really, I feel pretty strongly about this. It's pretty surprising when you can put so many people from such a diverse group together. I am one of those people that owns one of these little things, has the Declaration and the Constitution in it. Mine comes from the Cato Institute. Yours might come from somewhere else, but it's pretty beat up because I carry it around. I think that we need to, as a county, be those good men and take action so evil can't flourish.
Thank you. Commissioner Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And first of all, thank you for everyone that came tonight and gave excellent comments. There was before tonight I wasn't considering, or it hadn't been a thought about resolution, but I did struggle with the fact that there's language in this that resolution that is possibly directing the sheriff to do something, and he's an elected official, and I can't tell him what to do. You do. And so the question is, how at all do I incorporate that language and honor the request? Well, tonight you presented a vehicle which possibly could be used that I would like to research, and that's an ordinance, and an ordinance that says that no county resources will be expended to, cooperate with the NDAA Act 1021 and 1022. So I'm actually intrigued by that proposal and would like to ask if the board chooses to support it, would like to have a conversation with our legal counsel as to what their thoughts are. Can we do that? What are the pros and cons to it? And Commissioner Sorensen talked about the difficulties in his presentation as to what that might entail. So that is something that I think I personally want to support and see if we can include that. And then understand, can we, as was mentioned in a couple comments, I believe, can we actually prosecute individuals that come into our county and try to enforce that act? So I'd like to understand what we legally can and can't do in that vein. A little bit question, this has been going on for quite some time. Shane and company has been talking about this for probably what they feel ever. And so for us to say, okay, well, it was great to hear from you this evening, and Mr. Kyler, guess what? We got some more work for you to do. I probably would ask myself, when's the point where we're going to make a decision? I do know that if we embark on an ordinance, we have the requirements to do a first reading and hold a public hearing And so there is some legal time requirements in an ordinance that we would have to follow. So that is not a next meeting decision or possibly. So I would support, if this board supports, looking into what it would take to draft an ordinance that would include comments this evening that were made. I'd like to keep it kind of simple. Some of these resolutions that were passed out are quite verbose and talk about a lot of different things. I don't think it really needs to be quite that complicated, but I leave that to the legal experts to craft that up to find something to support. So, in short, I don't know. Maybe I'd look to Commissioner Sorensen if the majority of this body wants to look towards an ordinance. Do we also draft a resolution, or is that kind of a duplication of process and expenses that maybe we don't need to embark if we want to look at an ordinance?
I can respond to that. I would say that the courts are taking this issue up slowly, and it's always been my view that we really shouldn't be trying to get into what the federal courts are doing. What we ought to do is continually ask our representatives in Congress to repeal the section of the law, because if we get it repealed, then it's done. So I would favor the resolution on the legislation, and I would favor the ordinance dealing with the use of Lane County resources. And I think that that's the cleanest way to do it. I mean, I guess we could have an advisory opinion to a federal court somewhere, but the federal courts are rather independent, where the purpose of a resolution is a resolution of Congress and saying, change the law. I think it's worth noting that, Congressman DeFazio and Senator Merkley are opposed to this and have said they're opposed to it. So we do have willing ears for our 1% of Congress. That's good, but that's not enough. And I think also there's some merit to the idea that there's some weight here, which as local governments in various types of places, big, small, east, west, north, south, as they start passing these resolutions, it gives greater and greater momentum to the idea of repealing the section. And remember, repealing or having a constitutional ruling by a federal court on a statute that the president said he's not going to try to do it. Well, number one, we're having a new president in January 20th, 2017, so we will probably have a new person in that job, and this law allows that new president to take advantage of it, where the current president says, at least in his signing statement, he's not going to. So to me, this isn't just a matter of what the current situation is, it's also a justifiable fear about what might happen in the future, when maybe an administration would say, hey, you stuffed this in as a writer, and you stuffed this in at the last minute. Now, you either had to sign this bill, or we wouldn't have a military. So most presidents sign the National Defense Authorization Act. In fact, I'm not aware of one that hasn't. So, it's a pretty important piece of legislation when Congress finally comes to an agreement. But to stuff this in means that it's still the law of the land, at least as some people define that term. So until a federal court says no, until a federal court, the highest court that will get to it, says no, it's still going to be viewed by the federal government as the law of the land. So I think we need to say, we're against it, we want it repealed, that's our resolution, and we're not going to use local resources, and we're not going to allow local resources to be used to go along with it, because we do think it is unconstitutional. And we could use the decision of the district court, federal district court, that ruled it unconstitutional as part of the reason for that view.
Thank you. On June 19th is when Commissioner Sorensen authored and sent the letter to the federal delegation. And then on November 13th, the board approved a draft letter to be sent to the U.S. Senate from Oregon, expressing our concern with sections 1021 and 1022. On February 11th, we took up a draft order that was written by staff, and it failed for lack of motion at that point in time, in deference or in favor of moving forward with this work session and with this public comment and a gathering of more information. We've heard in no uncertain terms from a pretty broad cross-section, and Commissioner Bozovich mentioned the extremes of people who are testifying here tonight. I'd like to mention the extremes of the people who have, on this board, who have strongly supported the testimony tonight, and that would be Commissioner Bozovich to my right, and Commissioner Sorensen to my left, which are extreme.
I thought I was in the middle. I'm always in the middle.
Let's see. Clearly, this is one person said a little bit earlier, this is not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. Clearly, this has a great deal of public support and popular support among a vast number of people. And probably, if more people knew about it, we'd need to have a much larger room than this that we have tonight. So it's remarkable that you all skipped dinner because you came at 5:30 pre-dinner, not after dinner. And I'll get you out of here in time to perhaps grab some supper. But what I'm hearing tonight then is some energy toward discussing with legal counsel the drafting of an ordinance that will state our response and the way we will behave here in Lane County in regard to enforcing the NDAA. And also, in addition to the ordinance, a strongly worded resolution designed to send word to our congressional delegation that we would like to continue to urge them to repeal sections, the two sections, 1021, 1022. Thank you. So does that cover everything as far as as we've heard from the board, that we would ask staff and legal counsel to put together words on an ordinance and on a strongly worded resolution to follow the discussion that you've heard tonight?
Right.
To cover the discussion that you've heard tonight among the board.
Thank you. Chair Farr, as usual in this case, I need head nods. I'm wondering if you'd rather raise your hand this evening so I can ensure that I have at least three.
I call that physical acquiescence, yes.
So there we go. Thank you. We will move forward with that. Would you like a date in which you would like this returned? We can attempt. We don't have legal counsel to tell us if that will fit with their schedule, but.
Do you have a suggestion? I would suspect, is mid-May too soon for this?
I don't believe so.
Okay, and
we will bring it as soon as possible, but
okay,
we'll look at it.
To the agenda committee and then to the board subsequent to that.
Thank you.
And legal counsel will be involved in this. You know, I mentioned earlier that I took a test to become a U.S. citizen. I did. I was born in England, moved here when I was 10 years old, studied the Constitution, carried a copy around with me that was given to me by a judge when I held my hand up and said yes. I forewent all allegiance to foreign princes and queens, as it were. And I will state that my household has been one of adherence and discussion regarding civil disobedience for many years. My son Evan is receiving his doctorate, his PhD, in 2 weeks from the University of Virginia, and his dissertation is on civil disobedience. So, now, I'll not discuss the details of it. He's a Habermas scholar, and so I won't discuss, his civil disobedience discussion. But it is something that really is important that we all understand the social responsibility of civil disobedience and the social responsibility of being able to step out against acts by the government that we disagree with and that we feel to be either unconstitutional or unconscionable. So I think you've taken great action in coming here tonight. And Ms. Cohen, you said you were very nervous. I think most people were at some level nervous. I know I certainly was. All day long, I had to take a nap for about 15 minutes because I couldn't handle the nerves prior to this meeting tonight. But we wanted to make certain that everybody was heard tonight, make certain that we take strong action in response to the testimony that we've received, and I believe that you'll see action from this board subsequent to the discussion that we've had. Anything else from the board this evening? Just one last thing. Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank several people in the audience mentioned their veterans, and I just want to thank all the veterans in the audience for their service, including our chair, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Well, with that, I will adjourn this meeting of the County Commission.